agenda yesterday. Enjoy the nice day yesterday if you had an opportunity to do that. We will begin today's hearings with our state system of higher education. I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce those who are before us today to provide assistance in reviewing the 2018-2019 appropriation request as part of the governor's appropriation request. We have Dr. Karen Whitney, the Chancellor, Dr. Lori Carter, President Shippensburg University, Mr. Brian Swat. Brian, thank you. He's a member of the State Board of Governors for the President of the Indiana University Student Government Association. Brian, thank you for your assistance today. And Ms. Lois Johnson. Lois, thank you. Can I please ask you all to stand and be sworn, please? You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please swear or affirm.
Yeah, sure.
That was it. As is the process for the committee, we will start with standing committee chairs, jurisdiction over the state system, standing committee chair on education, then move to members. Standing committee chairs 10 minutes, members 5 minutes, and then if we have some time at the end, we'll go for a second round. So we'll start with our standing committee chair on education, Chairman Dinniman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask some questions, and I've already spoken to the Chancellor about some of these matters, of ways that we can save the state system considerable amounts of money. Sometimes by simple actions that we take. There's nothing, as you know, Mr. Chairman, ever simple in the Commonwealth, but by revising 5 bills, which include the original Act 188 of 1982, the threshold part of that act, the Administrative Code, the Commonwealth, one part of the Commonwealth Higher Education Modernization Act, and the Commonwealth Attorneys Act. Let me explain exactly what I'm talking about. When any of our universities goes to do a contract, it becomes a very burdensome process. And in fact, there are 5 signatures that are required. We had believed when we passed the Modernization Act that we had allowed our universities to actually independently have joined and use consortia to save money. It turns out that the wording wasn't appropriate. We have to change the wording because it only allows the system to do such. And if it goes through the system, it requires all those signatures to begin with. But also, one university might see an advantage in one consortium and another in another consortium. So let me give you an example of the savings. Westchester University, which is in my district, spends about $66 million on contracts. But we estimate that we would save 10 to 15% by having independent freedom in terms of doing these contracts. That's $660,000. Add that to another at least $100,000 in terms of the time of staff that has to be spent in doing this, and $100,000 really is is an understatement. That would be about $750,000. So we say, well, how do we get more money for the system? How do we deal with matters as tuition increases? And perhaps some of the answer is very simple. We simply give some mandate relief. We treat the state system in a way similar to that we treat the state relateds. We treat the state system in many ways similar to the way we treat Thaddeus Stevens School of Technology. What I'd like to ask the question is, I would like, Senator Tomlinson and I are proposing legislation that would give the state system schools control of the money that is not part of the state appropriation. That is approximately 3/4 of what you spend. This is money that comes from tuition, from fees, from federal grants. Now, that which is state appropriation, that 25%, in some colleges it's only about 20%, is still would still be under the State Attorneys Act and others. But the other 75% would not. And also we want to free up one of the aspects of the Modernization Act that wasn't taken care of was DGS. They had promised us we'd work it out. They never did. We want to give those universities that are qualified control over the contractual process. So instead of delaying year after year, it's not only, if I may say, that we save the money through this mandate relief, but many times a bargain only exists for a month in these consortia or 2 weeks, and we lose hundreds and hundreds of thousands because we can't take advantage of the bargain that exists because, in fact, in our university, I think only 7 of about 20 of our requests for these types of contracts have gotten through the Office of General Counsel, which is not even your office. It's the governor's office. So I was wondering how you feel about this, Madam Chancellor. And by the way, you've done an excellent job, and I want to thank you for changing the perspective. It used to be the individual campuses existed for the system. Under your leadership, the system exists for the individual campuses, and what I'm proposing is an example of how we can continue that.
Thank you, Senator. I really appreciate jumping into some very meaningful territories that we're working on right now, because obviously we appreciate the dollars the state gives us. We very much appreciate the dollars the students give us, and nobody likes the fact that we've gotten to a bit of a pickle over the 35 years the system's been here with, 35 years ago when the system was started, the state funded 67% of our operating costs, and the students funded, the remaining. Now it's flipped on its head, where Brian here and all the students behind me are paying 2/3 of the operating costs, and the state's paying 1/3. So what you're doing here, I think, is the next best thing. Obviously, the best thing is to have a multi-year trajectory to at least meet the students 50-50.
Yes.
That would take years to do. I'm not suggesting that in 1 year. But going where cost of operating is 50-50. The next best thing to do is what you're suggesting is what is every way we can make our dollars go farther. The dollars that we have to go farther, whether they're student dollars or they're state dollars, because the kinds of procurement, construction projects, the big dollar projects you're talking about changing under the bills you're suggesting, as much as anything, might be funded through student fees or might be funded through E&G. Both need to go farther for us. We've got to get faster at using these dollars in the marketplace and getting prime value back to the universities. And the bills you're suggesting would allow us to do this. We do respectfully appreciate working with DGS, but we've gotten backwards here. University presidents, when I was one at Clarion, I would tell you I often felt like I worked for DGS. DGS should be working for us because we're paying the bill.
Absolutely.
You award the money to the university, then the university, and some dollars for capital projects, you wait in a queue for 10 years. And you hold that money precious and appreciate that state dollars, and you want it to go farther. And right now we are squandering state dollars and time. And what you're suggesting would allow us to do what the system review report suggested, be less bureaucratic, more engaging, more flexible, and more nimble. And I certainly look forward to working with you and Senator Tomlinson to this effort.
Well, we want to include, of course, Senator Hughes and Senator Brown in this effort as well.
I will work with all senators on this effort.
I know you will. I know you will. And I say that simply, Vince and Pat, is because, every single member who sitting up here has said again and again, no matter the party, that we have to have some mandate relief in education and other areas. This is mandate relief that we can do. It doesn't require additional dollars from the state, which are precious. I agree with you. We hope we can get to the 50-50, but let's do it this year as a first step. And by the way, all the monies that the university would have would be audited anyway. So they're going to go through an audit. It's just cutting down on the signatures, giving more control to the local universities. We're doing exactly what we allowed the state-related to do.
President Ferentino has earned our trust, and he deserves the power and authority to be the president that you would like him to be of Westchester. And I would say that of all the universities and all the presidents.
Well, President Ferentino, who I believe is here, has done a wonderful job, and he's earned all of our trust and respect. And when I talk to my university and I see the amount of time spent on an individual contract, because remember, the threshold, I think it went to $20,100 with inflation. This is in law. This is under Act 188. That's even the first step of increasing that threshold to $500,000 or $750,000 or $1 million. Just think of the amount of time that's saved by our staff. I know in the international office, by the time we get the answers, the students have already gone somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
And one further thing is, if we're really, different universities have different needs. So this can be used at some universities that are short of students as student scholarship funds. Absolutely. And in fact, in the bill, we're going to say it's up to the university, but if a university wants us to use this as a recruitment tool, they can, whereas a university like Westchester is overwhelmed with students, so we need to use it as a tool so we can improve the technology aspects of our program and our graduate programs and others that are there. So I'm glad to hear that. Do you have other suggestions of mandates that we might be able to relieve you of? You don't want to get into prevailing wage because everyone fights on that, but other suggestions other than that on this?
Yes, sir. What I'll say is, since the review report was released in July, the Board of Governors and the leadership of the system and the universities have been working steadily, even as late as we had meetings with the presidents through dinner last night, on key recommendations and really principles of operating going forward based on the review report and deregulation, moving from, we honestly deserved the criticism of being told we were too bureaucratic, too bogged down, more interested in monitoring and auditing than actually ensuring that students succeed and that we leverage the success, the strengths of all of our universities so all 14 are successful. So you're right. What you're suggesting is in that ethos from a legislative standpoint. I will tell the senators that we've been working hard within our own operation, our own house, putting our own house into better order to be more flexible and responsive and engaging to why we exist. And I think that's what you should expect from us. Before we come calling on your desk, have we cleaned up ours? And so I was really pleased that at the January board meeting, we have a whole redesign effort. And one of the outcomes of what the board did in January, is they eliminated 11 policies. Do you guys ever eliminate laws? Do you ever end? Or we tend to add and add and add. We never go back, I think, as institutions and really critically look at what we do and how we operate. And there were actually policies on the books that people, and I've got to work with a lot of smart people in the system office who go, well, we can't really remember the last time we used that policy. And my view is when the board in October set 3 priorities for the system. Number 1, student success. Number 2, leverage the strengths of every university across the system. Number 3, transform our approach to leadership and governance. And my view is becoming a leaner, meaner system, more focused, aligning authorities to responsibilities. That's really given the presidents more of the authority, like I mentioned. That's what we've been doing internally. We've also, as we're doing that, keeping an eye, to your point, Senator, on legislative relief to that spirit. So we're taking care of ourselves first. The board courageously eliminated 11 policies in January. We're going to have more policies to eliminate, improve, or add going forward at every board meeting, probably for quite some time. In terms of additional legislative opportunities, I will say that one of the most concrete recommendations out of the system review report was to suggest that we should consider adding buyouts and phased retirements as one way that our leadership can properly and respectfully engage our workforce. And I think those are tools that the state relateds have and most of public higher ed has that actually we're legislatively prohibited right now from offering buyouts. We are working on phased retirements. We can do that, I understand, administratively. We have a task group with ABSCUF and management working on these 2 points, although they will affect all union employees. They will affect all employees, not just our faculty. But this idea of, as we're trying to move a workforce, and let me just talk about our workforce, we have incredibly dedicated men and women who are faculty and staff, and many, many of them, their life's work are at these universities. And we have to respect them and appreciate them, and at the same time know that things are rapidly changing in our society, that credentials and learning and the workforce needs of this state aren't what they used to be. I mean, in 1867, when Clarion was founded, they're celebrating their 150th anniversary this year, it was a teacher's college, and the state needed teachers. I can tell you right now, Clarion's producing more people in STEM H than in teaching, because that's what that region needs. So we're shifting and changing. As you know, more rapidly, seems like every day, every year, but our workforce can't. And so we've got to look at how we can work respectfully with our existing workforce, move it to where we need to be, and keep adding to be relevant for the future. I hope I've answered your question.
No, you have. And Mr. Chairman, a concluding comment, not a question, if I may, this is precisely the answer. You also have to have the authority to rapidly change the curriculum as the needs exist. We took that authority away from the Department of Education in terms of private institutions a couple of years ago, and it's astounding what some of those institutions are doing. We have to give you and individual campuses that ability. I would hope that, if I may say, that this has to be a bipartisan effort, as was the Modernization Act of 2014. Senator Picola and I worked as a team. We got 7 senators involved. In fact, some of what I'm suggesting were leftover bills from that. Senator Mary Jo White's bill dealt with DGS, as Senator Baker knows. I hope you'll take up the cause, Lisa. But if we work together and you work to relieve this, we can succeed. We all talk about mandate relief. Here's a chance to do it. Save money, offer scholarships for students, and those universities need more students. It's a win-win for everyone, and it's not easy because of the 5 laws, but we can do it, and I hope that my colleagues here will be supportive, and that in a bipartisan team way, Mr. Chairman, we can all succeed this. By the way, why don't you apply to be the permanent chancellor? You're very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Dinnerman. Standing Committee Chair, Senator Eichelberger.
You're here, John. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got to start by saying I'm not as enthusiastic as my good friend Andy Dinnerman about the future of PASHE. I think that we have a lot of problems there, and a lot of it isn't of our doing in the legislature. A lot of it is related to the management of the system and the collective bargaining agreement that you're stuck with that stops a lot of change and progress. It would be nice to make a lot of these changes, but as I see it, you're not permitted to make a lot of these changes, at least from an administrative level, without getting permission. So some of these things don't happen. Let me ask you a couple questions up front. What's the total system graduation rate for 4 years?
The total system graduation rate, let me first say, nationally, is 28%. 4-year graduation, 49% 6-year graduation. For our system, it is 41% for 4-year and 59% for 6-year. I started off in answering your question with the larger narrative of the national situation, and then I give you the state, because quite frankly, if I'd only mentioned the state, any reasonable person would go, well, that sounds terrible. But it is not terrible. We are better than our peer institutions. But I can also tell you that nobody is satisfied with that. Our goal going forward, and that's why the board rightfully set our #1 priority is student success. That is, our intention is every student we admit, we work to the greatest extent possible that they graduate.
So when you say nationally, you're talking about what schools?
Other schools like ours. You're
not talking about state-related private institutions. You're talking about state-owned universities?
There's a classification by the federal government called public master's granting universities. And there's about 600 in this country, of which ours are very much like that. Probably the one that is not like that as much is IUP, because they have such a large doctoral granting population. But I think I'm not cherry picking the data. It's about 600 institutions across the country.
Okay, because it's far less than like Penn State or Pitt's would be in some other schools in Pennsylvania.
I'd have to look it out. I will tell you, with systems like Pitt and Penn State, I would look beyond their flagship campuses and look at their entire system.
Well,
I don't have that data.
No, I know.
You'd have to ask them for it.
I'm looking at their whole data. What's the lowest graduation rate you have out of the schools, out of the 14 schools? What number?
I don't have it broken down in front of me by each institution. What I have today is presenting information across the system, but I'd be more than happy to get you
Can
the
you
list.
get that to the chairman, please?
Yes, sir, I will.
What's your average base salary for a professor?
Okay, because it's a number, let me get it. Plus, Lois is my lifeline, so okay. There's a couple numbers that we can work off of. What I really like to do is cut to the chase and do total gross earnings, because different people in different ways earn money. for example, administrators, there's basically one salary. You don't get overtime.
I'm talking about
overtime.
Professors.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to you about all our employees because I value all of them. I will answer your question. Faculty have very clearly outlined in the collective agreement various ways in which they have a
Madam
base salary.
Chancellor,
Yes,
please,
sir.
We have limited time here, so please.
I will cut to it. The gross earning.
Madam Chancellor, hold on.
Yes, sir.
Hold on a second. Just answer the senator's question directly.
Yes,
he
sir.
asked you about faculty salary. Just answer that question.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Okay, absolutely.
Because I'm saying that because we have limited time.
Yes, sir. I understand. Okay, thank you. 117,261.
Okay. And what are the work hours that are required by the CBA?
I don't know the exact number in the CBA. Is there an exact number in the CBA?
It's approximately 4 classes a semester.
Right.
Plus?
And the way I would do that is most courses, I average at minimum about 45 hours a week. I don't know what's in the CBA. I say that because the faculty teach on average 4 classes. We have a 4-4 teaching load. On average, classes are 3 hours a week. I see that faculty prepare 2 to 3 hours for every hour in class, in addition to advising, research, and service to their department, their college, and their university. So I can comfortably say, particularly in the fall and spring semesters, I would average they work about 45 hours a week on minimum. And most faculty work year-round because they take on writing and research projects in the summer when they're not teaching.
Well, that didn't answer my question, but I think so. It's 12 hours classroom, and then you have some prescribed office time, I understand.
In the CBA, the minimum is 5 hours.
5 hours, so it's 12 and 5. Okay, let me ask you these. This is a series of a few questions, just a yes or no answer, please.
Yes, sir.
Can you have a professor share time in another department without faculty approval?
No.
Can a tenured faculty member make a permanent move to another school?
Yes.
They can?
You wanted yes or no. There is a way to do it. There's a process that faculty can move from one university to another university. It's a lengthy process, but there is a process, and it has happened.
Okay. Well, I didn't see that in the contract, but on a temporary basis, I did. In fact, that's my next question. Can a tenured faculty member visit another school, what you term visit, temporary, without the faculty in both schools voting to approve that faculty member?
My understanding is, I don't know if it's both schools, the receiving institution, I believe, must approve it.
It's both schools.
Okay, then that's,
can a school hire someone without faculty approval?
no, they can't.
If a school is involved in layoffs or what the CBA refers to as retrenchment, can you keep highly rated faculty over more senior faculty?
No.
Can a school hire temporary and part-time faculty whose total time equals more than 25% of the full-time equivalent without faculty approval?
No.
Can you downsize a department as a result of increased distance education offerings?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
Yeah, I would say no, but the way you're phrasing it, I'm being very thoughtful in my yeses and nos.
Can you require a faculty member to work on distance learning that didn't have that specific charge specified in his or her letter of appointment?
No.
Well, the way I see things is we have a system that we're having a very difficult time affording these days, and we have a system that you can't manage. So you're back looking this year for a considerable amount of additional money, and I think it's something that we should be taking a very hard look at to see if this system can survive as a system. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Eichelberger. We will turn to members of our committee for 5 minutes, starting with Senator Ward.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll be hasty here. So one thing that I ask about every year, and I continue to ask because I want to know how our progress is, we have the state system. Do we have programs in all of the schools that we could coordinate and condense so that we don't offer the same programs. You know, of course, some programs will be offered in every school, but there are some costly programs like nursing and engineering. They're costly. Is there any kind of effort to consolidate so maybe they're not at every one of those schools?
Yes, there is actually several processes that we use to monitor and look at the graduation, how many people are graduating in any degree in any field, and there's a constant engagement between our system leadership and the different presidents and provosts. So there's a continual discussion on productivity and the number of graduates every year and then over a 5-year period to see that and to look at, we call them high enrolled programs or low enrolled programs. And there is a constant review on the low enrolled programs. And in fact, we have over the years removed way more programs because of changing interest by our students and industry. And we've added programs in response to increased interest. And it's a continuous effort.
Do you have any programs in particular that are only offered at some schools?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think, for example, only a few of our universities offer an engineering. Not everyone offers. Very few offer. If we were to do a matrix, and I can't get you of who's offering what, but no, there are strengths in every university, and there are emphasis, and it's different. Every university is different. That's one of the things in our re-engineering of the system is one size doesn't fit all. It doesn't. The operating approaches have to be different at every university because the program array is different. The academics are different.
And while I see some of the good ideas here from Senator Dinniman about letting the boards be more on their own, I also worry a little bit that brings in more politics from a local level. And I don't mean politics like senator and representative.
No, sure.
I mean, you know, the politics of being in a local area and representing a local area to make sure that they are being as efficient as they can.
Well, one of the things that we've done in the last several years is invested quite a bit at the system level on, I think it's a nationally award-winning data warehouse of information from what our students' interests are, where our alumni are succeeding, and labor and industry data. So what we're doing is as any program it continues, gets refreshed, or new programs, we look at that kind of assessment toolkit that we have in working with presidents and academics on going forward, and industry. So I don't call it political, it is personal. But we want to make it personal because we want to meet the needs of these regions. So I don't consider that maybe a little P, not a big P, you know, but no, we're doing that right now. And that's why actually you've seen a shift and we're offering more degrees in STEM H than education. Our top 3 areas are now STEM H, business, and education.
Okay. And on the surface, at least, because you only gave us a couple sentences, but your graduation rates look pretty good. It's good.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Senator Ward. Senator Haywood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I have a few questions. There's a report we have here that indicates that the average or maybe the median salary of parents is $87,000 that we have received. Can you give us a sense of or where types of employment these parents are in? Just like 2 parents making $40,000. Can you have any sense of where the sources of income are for these parents?
I don't have it disaggregated. That data point was obtained by looking at the financial aid forms our students fill out and knowing what their average family income is. So I apologize. I don't have any. I think actually what we do keep track of is the data around average family incomes by county in Pennsylvania. And we watch that very closely because our universities are spread across the Commonwealth. And as you know, it's a very diverse Commonwealth from a socioeconomic status.
Thank you. My next question is in connection with student loan levels. We have a report that the student loan levels of Pennsylvania students is at or near the top in the United States of America from Lend EU. Are you familiar with that, and how do we get to that point?
Yes, sir. Well, the way we've gotten to that point is over the last 35 years, the students are paying more and the state's paying less. I am not criticizing the state paying less. I'm telling you the relationship and the impact. I completely appreciate the challenges the state faces. But that's how we've gotten here over almost a 40-year period. I think the idea, you're absolutely right, that we've got the average Pennsylvania debt is $35,759. That's for our system, correct? Or, that's for the state. That's for the state. And for us, it's 34,000. So we're slightly less than the average of all of higher ed in Pennsylvania. Obviously, for many people, that's troubling. And that's a challenge to put that kind of debt on people. One of the things we've done in our system is ensure that at every university, there's an emphasis on scholarships and grants. And there are programs on financial literacy, both for family members and for the students, so that as they make strategic decisions, they'll commit to what I call smart debt and not unnecessary debt. Because given the lifetime earnings that college graduates still rightfully earn, it's a smart investment. Now, there's many ways to get there. That's another reason why we have extensive agreements with community colleges. We're expanding our online learning. We're trying to re-engineer ourselves to be where more and more of the people in Pennsylvania need and want us to be, because for many people, the cost is the factor.
Thank you. My next question is in connection with the funding level. I have received a report that the funding level to the state system is roughly equivalent to what we did in 2001, 2002. Do you have the same numbers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So my next question is in connection with capacity. We have a report here that says your capacity is up to about, you could handle about 118,000 full-time students, and you only got about 95,000. Do you have a strategy to get to closer to full capacity?
Right now, each of the universities are working through strategic enrollment plans based on their mission and their academic strengths. I think the big shift that you're seeing since the review of the system this last summer is trying to look at where are the creative, innovative ways that we can leverage our academic teaching and learning. I mean, that's our core focus, is teaching and learning. So how do we leverage that across the system in ways we haven't done before, using distance delivery? Again, we are exploring in some very thoughtful ways discussions with our different labor agreements. 90% of our employees are in collective bargaining agreements, and we are looking at how can we come to mutual agreements on different ways of operating so we can maximize our capacity. Not to say that every university has to hit a certain enrollment, but we have a mission here, and there are so many populations and parts of this state that are undereducated in terms of post-secondary learning. It's fulfilling that mission. That's our greatest interest. But yes, sir.
Thank you. My next question is in connection with the collective bargaining agreements that were raised by Senator Ackelberger. From his comments, I got the impression that these agreements might be significantly limiting the improvement of the system. Is that your opinion as well?
I'm sorry, which agreements are significant?
The collective bargaining agreements, I think, with the faculty
yes,
was
sir.
one of the main concerns that my friend Senator Eichelberger raised, and I'd like to get your impression on the impact of these agreements on the management, your management of the system.
Yes, sir. My comments come from being interim chancellor for 7 months and a college president in the system for 7 years. I will always say I have the highest appreciation and regard for our own employees. I will say there is a larger cultural issue here in the state of Pennsylvania that is beyond this system or 14 universities around collective bargaining. So I'm going to point out probably what you already know, because you see people, system heads like me or agency heads, come and go all the time. There are larger issues here that the workforce needs, that's needed in teaching and learning at these universities, and probably the 60 or 70-year-old construct of collective bargaining are out of whack. And that's the challenge. So we're working on it, and we're trying to make the best use of the mousetrap we're working in right now. But I just want to point out the overall challenges of work rules and compensation, and how it's slowing us down and getting in our way of being the kind of operations that I think we all would like to see, the employees as well. My point is the way in which we arrange contracts, union contracts, and the way we fund it is broken. There are multi-year obligations that are of huge expenses to the university, because rightfully so, universities are a majority labor. Our biggest costs are our people, and that's the way it ought to be. That's what we're about. And there's 90% are in labor agreements that have these multi-year obligations with no plan for funding, no connection to fund them at all, and then people are shocked when we might have to ask students to help pay for labor. That's the broken model, but it's larger and it's beyond us. But it certainly is one of our greatest challenges to ensuring a stable operation.
Thank you very much. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Haywood. Senator Martin, followed by Senator Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here to testify, and thank you everyone who came out today.
Thank you, Senator.
Listening to Senator Eichelberger list those things, I have very much a new appreciation for the job President Anderson, and I'm sure a lot of his peers had to do. I don't know at what point, and I'm sure these collective bargaining agreements have morphed over time, which they typically do, and there's a lot out of your hands if you weren't here. But I remember my days as a county commissioner, you often got into the discussion of what were 1620 management rights, things you couldn't bargain away. And I'm just astounded at the personnel-related kind of things that we hire a president in order to do what's right and run things efficiently and effectively, and he's not the decision maker in that. And to me, that's very troubling. A couple things I just wanted to talk about. A is looking into an ERIP. I mean, most financial advisors typically will tell you that ERIPs, early retirement incentive programs, don't work unless you have clear-cut, laid-out plans for restructuring employees if you're going to eliminate positions before they're rehired, and certainly that you're not bringing back people at the same rate or more that you had just incentivized to leave. And unfortunately, a lot of government entities or public entities aren't very good at holding that line. It's something to look at, but with great caution in how it's done. Right. My other thing is I noticed in here you have the performance budgeting or performance funding. And obviously how you gauge performance is really important. I just got done listening to the perspective of why we have high student debt. And we can get into discussion whether, the taxpayers aren't giving enough or the students are not paying much. But what drives the need for that revenue? Spending, right? You're asking from the taxpayers and from students what you need to run an institution. And if an institution can't control its costs, guess what? Those paying the bill, these students and whatnot, are going to feel that pinch, and certainly taxpayers are. But in terms of performance funding, I look at performance being there. I look at all these young folks in this room. Obviously, they're going to learn a skill or to educate themselves, to prepare themselves, to hopefully have the opportunity to have a family-sustaining job. And there's a lot of things that can impact that. Namely is, where's our economy? Where are the jobs at? So my question to you is, how do you guys gauge what performance is? Because I think it's 2.4% of your funding is actually awarded to the institutions based on performance. What are those standards? And then the second part is for all the young folks who come in, and I don't know when they have to declare by anymore. Back in my day, you had to declare before your junior year. What efforts are put in, though I hope these conversations are happening with guidance counselors in high school too, but when people walk in the door and they're assigned a student advisor, who's looking at them in the face and a young person says, I want to major in X. Yet that advisor knows, your chance of getting a job in that field and the amount of money you're going to spend here. You might want to think about one of these because this is what our economy really needs right now, and you can get into a job right away. Are we having those conversations with our kids, pointing them to majors that may lead to what really the biggest measure of performance is getting that education and getting in a family-sustaining job? That is what's most critical.
Yes, sir. I think what you can be assured at all 14 universities, we have systems that go back to even universities working with ninth graders, not waiting till they're in college, but even looking at, because well over about 40% of our students are still first generation college students. So and that's a proud tradition of our state universities and how they're working in terms of the fastest way for upward mobility through higher learning. And so you've got, these universities have programs, in many cases are partnering with counties, with federal programs and other state programs to get to kids in middle school and high school about all kinds of things, financial planning with the family members as well, and academic planning and what courses to take even before they get there. Then there's dual enrollment programs between high school and to bridge into college. More and more students are taking. Then there's once you get there, even at the orienting stage. I mean, it used to be when I was going to college, you basically visited one or two and you picked. Well, now people have they visit lots, which I think is good because the fit is everything. I mean, you can have great academic quality, but it's got to resonate with the person. The person really is, students will say, and these students behind me will say this, they fell in love with the place. That's what you want, because it's a tough road. And so all those things factor together in not only having good financial planning, but in good academic planning and picking a major and area of study. And what you can know and be really proud of is the shift now with 28% of our students are enrolled in STEM H, science, technology, engineering, math, and healthcare, and 16% in business, and still 11% in education. That shows a good migration here if people are thinking. You know, their mom might have been a teacher, but they're not just doing that. They're really looking at what's out there, what they're good at, what their passion is, and where they see. Because most of our students, 80%, come within 200 miles of any of these universities. And about 90% of our students stay here. So our job, I think, throughout the system, is to act like a system, to be aware of what the Commonwealth's needs are going forward in the future, not today, but 4 years from now, or to 2026. And where are those jobs, and how do we have credentials at different levels from associate, bachelor, master, or certificates to prepare those people? And that's going on at every university.
That's good. And hopefully, Senator Ward brought up a very good point as well about adjusting. No one needs to be everything to all people.
That's right.
And sometimes, when you see institutions try to be the masters of all and try to compete with other institutions, we all vary so different. This state is very diverse, and the needs of near a school like Millersville University in Central PA versus what the local economy is like out in the western part of the state, it can vary. And to be able to adjust your programs and personnel to match what the needs of the current environment are, I think is critical, and also in terms of maintaining cost. And finally, I'm glad you hit on the idea of partnerships, because I think now more than ever, I've seen it happen locally through President Anderson's efforts too, in partnering with the other local institutions. You and I had a great conversation as to, right now, if we were to admit, where's the number one demand for jobs right now? It's in the skilled trades and career and technology, and the more that schools are looking even to partner with them and work towards kind of funneling their students all in the same direction of what's going to be the best recipe for success for them, to me is better for all of us and will be less expensive in the end and less debt.
Yes, sir. What I can do, if you'd like, is I can get you information on the most popular programs at every university, and you'll see a diversity of program array there. Would you like to see a copy of that? Because it really is very diverse. There's no one university that has the same strengths or the same population. They really have worked hard to year after year, the senators have said we want a diverse portfolio throughout the state that meet the future workforce needs, and we're delivering on that.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Senator Baker, followed by Senator Street.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to follow up on the workforce development component. That's probably one of the largest complaints I hear from employers, that positions are in high demand fields are left open and we're not getting the skilled workforce. And one of the complaints about the system is the lack of innovation and flexibility in trying to meet those needs. I've heard some of that. You're mentioning that you're moving in that direction. Do you truly believe you need other steps to be more innovative, to respond, to be agile and flexible? Or are there things that you feel we can help you with to do that?
Well, I think it's very reasonable, because you've got constituents and communities that you care about, to continue to ring the bell on the need to be responsive and relevant in what we do. I appreciate your role in that, and it's healthy for us to go through this on a very regular basis. I mean, we are clear. Actually, the system has an award-winning database and set of data tools that look at workforce interests. Like, for example, I can tell you that by 2026, and we can't just look at today, 2018, we've got to look ahead for our students. There's an expected 1.2 million need for skilled jobs in this state. And we've broken that down by industry areas. We continually evaluate. In fact, I met with the presidents yesterday on what are their program strengths, what are they offering today, and based on these.
university came to you and said, I'd like to introduce this program by next fall, do they have the flexibility to get that done?
As of this last January board meeting, yes, we do. Because what happened was we're taking to heart that we've become bureaucratic and clunky and overly regulated in even our views of ourselves. And instead, we want to be innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial and responsive. What we can do now is I can tell you that if a president were to come to me and say, I have an idea, I'm working with my academic team, in 60 or 90 days, I'm going to come back to you with a responsible plan, that it can be approved.
I'm very happy to hear that, because that
just changed.
One of the chief complaints I've heard. I was the last class to graduate from Shippensburg in the old system, and as I'm looking at Brian, who is here, he is a student from northeastern Pennsylvania, although not in my senatorial district. I can tell all of you and the students who are sitting here, an internship, I met an individual at a career fair on the campus of Shippensburg and was offered an opportunity for an internship in the Senate, and have had every job, including now the one that I hold as an elective office holder. So, Brian, we focus so much on the system. I think it's important for us also to hear about the student perspective with the system, and how do you value internship opportunities and that specific career approach, because that was what got my foot in the door and why I've pursued my passion, which is public service.
Yeah, thank you for that question, and I'm really glad that you bring that up, because personally, from my perspective, and I'm sure a lot of the students behind me can also attest, although the in-the-classroom experience and program is very, very important, it really does not quite provide you all of the experience and education that you need to prepare you properly for the workforce. So I really drive hard the experiential learning component, and I believe that all students ought to have that experience and ought to have that opportunity to have that. One of the reasons why I chose IUP, and I benefited from it greatly, is the opportunities that have been afforded to me while I've been there. I actually had an opportunity to intern in the PennDOT Office of Legislative Affairs this past summer and in the winter in the legislature. I've had a few opportunities over the course of the past few days to potentially intern down in D.C. But the opportunities are endless. And the fact that they provide those to the students at our universities, it really does have that next level and the next step in preparing them properly for the workforce.
And I think that tie has to continue. Just one final question to the system. I have legislation that would create online anonymous options for reporting of whether it's harassment, sexual violence, stalking, and the like. And I'd like to focus a little bit on campus safety,
Sure.
Not just as we're talking about preventing, responding, encouraging investigations, encouraging reporting, but obviously with the other things that we're reading about in terms of safety of students, not just in high schools, but post-secondary. Can you address what the system is doing to protect our students who are on campus?
Well, it's a topic of continual discussion with the presidents and the executive leadership at every university. What I'll do is, in particular, I think you should hear from Dr. Carter, who's president of Shippensburg, and I will also say is an alum of Clarion University. So our thing is we are very PA proud and couldn't be more proud when we graduate folks. They go out. She's been to a few other states before she got back here, and we're glad to have her here. So would it be all right if she answered that as president? Dr. Carter?
Thank you, Chancellor Whitney. Campus security is a major concern of every president. Any president that's sitting in this room right now can tell you that it's one of the things that we think about probably on a daily basis. And it is really the responsibility of every member of a campus community to engage in making the campus as safe as possible. So we begin that process with training employees at every level. We each have police forces on our campus, and of course they are highly trained to handle major events that take place on campus. But on a day-to-day basis, if you see something, say something, is really the responsibility of every member of the campus community. So we train our students, we train our staff, we train our faculty. Everyone is aware of what to do should there be a situation that involves the safety and security of our communities. It is something we think about on a daily basis, because the more students feel safe on our campuses, the more they're going to thrive there. So it becomes an organic part of life on our campus. I know when you hear about it in the media, it's sort of an outlier. but it's really a part of everything that we do on a daily basis.
Would you support the legislation for online reporting or using an app or some type of mechanism to provide anonymous online reporting?
Well, we have that in place actually right now with our system. And the other thing I'm pointing out, collegiate policing is different than municipal policing. It's a whole area of subspecialty in policing, and it's very much about building community and relationships. And it really is a community effort, as the President's mentioned. So we do have online reporting. We've got the 24/7. We work.
Would have no issue with the bill that we currently.
I'm afraid I haven't read the bill in detail, so I can't commit to something I haven't read to. I am committed to everything we can do to create communities that can be as safe as possible.
And I appreciated your comment in the materials about the potential for victim advocates to be on campus so that there is
absolutely
an opportunity for that. Thank you very much. I'm way over my time. Thank you.
The online reporting goes where?
I'm sorry, where?
The online reporting, where does it go?
Well, every police department, every university has a police department and a police chief, and there are annual state and federal reporting requirements that would go to everything from numbers of calls to incidents. There's a whole methodology that we use for state and federal reporting, but then we use it to review it in terms of larger themes. And I mean, when you've got 100,000 people, there's all kinds of things going on, not just the horrific, most violent, but all kinds of. It's like a community by itself.
So someone goes online, sees something, wants to report, it goes to the campus police.
Yes, sir. Okay. It goes right there, and then they do a triage on is it in their area or is it in a student affairs area, and we work from there. All the universities have teams that work together to look at particularly high incidents of concern. Also, trends. We're trying to be proactive too. So if we see a trend of maybe small incidents that won't be on the paper, but if we can keep small things small, we will.
And this is an anonymous source.
I think they can do either. They can do anonymous or tell us who they are. We prefer to be most effective if people will call us and tell us who they are so we can follow up, but it's not required.
Not required. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Senator Street, followed by Senator Scavella.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm pleased that you're here, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. The job market continues to change, and with the economy. The PASHE system is an important part of how Pennsylvania remains economically competitive and also allows our folks who are young and not so young, who are students, to be job ready. What kinds of things is PASHE doing to make sure its curriculum is aligned with the future economic needs of Pennsylvania's economy?
Well, one is, again, our cutting-edge use of labor force data, continually working with labor and industry leaders. Particularly, each of the presidents will have in various forms, whether it's commissions or advisory boards or kitchen cabinets or groups of people they work with, to keep in good contact with what's occurring in the regions that they're serving. We're very clear on in mapping out for each of the 14 universities where are the students coming from, where are they going to after graduation, and what are those labor force needs really for the next, right now we're projecting through 2027.
And
2026, sorry, yeah.
Thank you. My second question, I like Senator Baker, think that it's important that we hear from our young folks. And I also was an intern. I actually was an intern for my predecessor in law school, and internship worked out well for me. I ended up being her successor in the Senate. Yeah. But I see we have Mr. Watt, who's president of the student body at IUP, where my son is a student. I'm interested in what do you think we can do to improve what we can do to improve the system, and what things you would recommend.
Thank you for the question, and I'm going to break this down into two-part answer. One would be from the management perspective, from a student's perspective, I should say. So management-related student perspective. I think we ought to do everything within our power as a system to ensure that tuition and fees are remaining at the lowest possible cost for students, while ensuring that we're also providing and maintaining the highest quality of education. So in any way possible, the management can do that, and there's a lot of things that people talk about throughout that dialogue in order to achieve that. I feel as a student that's very, very important. From an experiential standpoint, I would say on campus providing those opportunities for the experiential learning, as well as providing the in-the-classroom experience that really benefits the students. And I think we have some tremendous faculty that really do that within the classroom. But I think those are two very important components to that.
Brian, do you know what congressional district you live in?
Well, it just changed, but...
IUP proud. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Senator Scavello, followed by Senator Argel.
Great answer, Brian. Good morning, Chancellor. Good morning to all of you. I have to come clean. I'm on the Council of Trustees at East Stroudsburg University. And one of the things that we noticed, pretty much it was brought out here, the graduation rate. So we try to figure out a way how we can correct that. And I believe that the Warrior Promise is one way that we can, guaranteeing 4 years at the same rate for that student. So starting January of 2018, I want to thank, I know you had something to do with approving it. And so that if you enter the school and you'll spend 4 years there, every year the tuition will be the same. And I believe it's going to help us, and it might be something that you might want to look at for the rest of the system, because, we need to do some way of guaranteeing that the student that we can do the best that we can. The other thing we spoke about, looking at the dollars, if you want to talk about it briefly, with FIA that we spoke about. If you want to talk about that a little bit, let the rest of the folks know.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that the Warrior Promise is a very promising practice. I will tell you what you're going to be seeing over time is each of the universities, again, less bureaucratic, less clunky, less one size fits all. One size does not fit all. Every university has its own unique strengths, its own region. This is a very diverse state. Yeah. So the Warrior Promise is East Stroudsburg's key approach to pricing. Well, maybe there's another university that would never do that. But they're going to develop their own approach to pricing. Sure. In that same board meeting in January, IUP got permission to reduce their tuition at their Punxsutawney campus. So we're in a state of disruption, which I think is quite appropriate, to looking at pricing that fits the mission of each university, that gets back to it. Because the formula here is cost minus subsidy equals what Brian pays, the price. Yeah. So we're talking cost today. Subsidies are important between what the state pays. It all works together to the bottom line price. So you're right, FIA is part of that subsidy. And I have and we have a large number of students who receive FIA. So I think is that 30,000 of our students receive FIA support. That's out of 102,000, 30,000. And I'm proud of that, because that means we are getting to the heart of this state. We're not just we're a university for every person, every son and daughter in Pennsylvania. And I do want to talk about FIA because, again, with my fresh eyes looking at FIA, I will say I think FIA is rewarding the higher cost institutions and ignoring the higher value institutions. Again, we're driving the lowest possible price we can, but at the same time trying to pursue access and quality and graduation. Those are all cost factors. So I am respectfully going to be chatting with FIA about are there some ways they might reconsider some practices.
And I also sit on that board, and I know the Senator Hughes and some of the other senators, and something we need to look at. Now I have to come clear. Anyone here from Cheyney? Any students? Okay. 3 years ago, you were at 7-Eleven, and I made some comments, and one of the students lives in my district, but that attended Cheyney, and I went out to visit the campus. He invited me out to visit the campus back in, I'd say, April of 2015, and I said to him, I said, look, you guys can make the corrections here. If each one of the students went back home and brought one student back to Cheyney and say why you should be here, and your number is the next 2 years, 746, 755. Someone's doing it. I challenge all of you guys out there to preach that on the campus. You want to go back home and say why you attend Cheyney. Try to bring, if every 2 students at Cheyney gets together and brings 1 student to the school, you're going to solve your own problems. And I know you have a new president there, and that's where it starts.
Yes, sir.
So, do I have a commitment from you guys? You're going to do that, students?
Well, actually, Senator, just yesterday, President Walton briefed the other presidents and I on enrollment building efforts, and that was, he must have he heard what you said directly or through the student, but one of the things he talked about was the idea of how does he inspire and incentivize existing students to go and bring in a student with that kind of, because the other thing about Cheyney that is so fabulous is the sense of family, and it's personal and it's relational.
I got that impression when I visited
the
campus.
Yes, sir. And so that we were briefed on that yesterday, that very same approach.
And the advantage for you students would be the more you bring, the less the tuition. You can, it'll help you with your tuition.
Yes, sir.
So please, I saw that when I was there, the love the students who were there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Senator Squilla. Senator Orgo, followed by Senator Mensch.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Yes, sir.
Last week I had the opportunity, at the invitation of a group of faculty members at Kutztown, to visit with them, and it was a very interesting meeting. Equally interesting to me was my walk back to my car, because what I saw was a lot of empty parking places. Now, when I was a student leader 40 years ago, like the gentleman to your right, my hair was a lot shaggier and I wasn't nearly as well dressed, but it was the 70s, okay? So you have to cut me a break there. But parking was always an issue, I think, at most universities, and there was never enough. Now, perhaps Kutztown has done an amazing job of planning for the future, so they have too much parking. Or maybe it's because of declining enrollment, and that's my fear. Senator Mensch and I worked very diligently last semester, listen to me, back on campus again, last year on a resolution that was unanimously adopted by this Senate to direct the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee to do an unbiased, independent study on the viability and the sustainability of your system. We care very deeply about the past, the current status, and your future students, and we should have those results in the next few months. I think one of the key issues, as I'd indicated, is the numbers, your number of students. You have some campuses that have really lost a fair number of students. And when we discussed this last year, and I asked the same question to Penn State and Pitt and Temple, I understand demographics. Pennsylvania's changing. We don't have as many high school students as we used to in some of our communities. But I'm struggling with that because some of our colleges and universities are growing. And so they have the same demographic pressures that your schools do. And I have to think it's a deeper answer than just, the Nittany Lion is more popular than the Husky or the Warrior or the whatever. So what's really driving this incredibly difficult enrollment issue at many of your universities?
Well, I do want to point out several things because you've brought up a good position here. We are in a very disruptive stage. The universities, these 14 universities, had a historical pipeline of high school students. And to be candid, we haven't changed fast enough to keep up with these changes in demographics. And we are now. For example, 27% of our students are transfer students. That's a relatively recent number. So that maybe you may have missed the cars because they were transiting between, and there's also growing numbers of part-time students. So if you have part-time students, transfer students, and we have growing numbers of students learning online. Also with STEM-H, and even with education, you have students who take part of their courses on campus, and now we've got them out in the communities working. They're out doing what we call, Brian used the phrase experiential working. So as I'm trying to think about the parking lot metaphor, why aren't they there? Well, maybe they're in a better place. They're out in the workforce applying what they learned in class. Those are all possibilities. We have hit a downward cycle, and it is a cycle. much like the stock market. There are highs and there are lows. We all hit a low in the stock market recently. I'm looking for it to get higher. But, I mean, we're in that on high school demographics. But did you know that there's 1.4 million people in Pennsylvania with some college and no degree? And I've been talking to the presidents, how do we recapture that market? For example, Cal U has a program called Finish Line, and Clarion has a program called Re-Up. Both of the programs, their intent is they're going back to past folks who've stopped out. I don't use the word drop out. I use the word stop out, and saying, where are you, where'd you go? We've got superior data now that can show you where people went after they left into these universities. Did they go to another state university? Did they go somewhere else? Or did they truly not complete? And we're going back to these, and we're finding really good success on bringing them back, working out customized programs to complete. Those are new activities that are occurring. I mean, in a way, I have to be honest with you, institutions aren't usually prone to really want to change. You might see that in some other areas of your life.
Once in a while, yes.
Yeah, and I'm being honest about that. They are, and that is not just because we have unions. Now, that's our particular concoction of why we don't change. There's a history and ritual and culture we're working through, but institutions have to be pushed, prodded, and almost put into a state of high alert to change. And that's where we are right now. I think the breaking point here is we recognize that, and as I mentioned earlier, internally, and we'll be working with you all externally on affecting those changes structurally.
I'll be in touch with you as soon as we have the results from the independent study. I think every member of this committee, every member of the Senate, we want to help.
Yes, sir.
And we just need to know how.
We welcome that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Argos. Senator Mensch, followed by Senator Killian.
Chancellor, good morning. Good to see you, and welcome to everyone that's here with you and everyone in the audience as well. I'm going to go down a path that last year got some of the people in higher education excited. I had some phone calls after my questions, but I'm sensing an issue. First of all, let me applaud you for saying that you don't want to squander state resource and time. We don't either, and we appreciate that. And education is becoming increasingly expensive, and there are some reasons why it should be. There are some artificial reasons or other contributing factors that are making it expensive as well. But the state system does the same thing a legislature does. You put things in silos as you view them, okay? And you're trying to address each of the 14 universities uniquely, without the synergy that they all contribute to each other, and yet you're a system, okay? So there are some real operational conflicts there. We have the same thing with 14 community colleges. We have the state-relateds, and then those, by the way, are the three separate groups that we fund, the state legislature, through the budget. We are funding you to make you compete with Penn State, who we are funding to compete with you. If you think about it, okay, we make this dollar very inefficient. So the question to you is, it's a two-part question. Are you having any conversations with community colleges or state-relateds? Are you beginning to think about an educational continuum that helps these young people get better prepared for the marketplace? Someone said earlier that not every job requires a 4-year degree. Some require advanced degrees. Likewise, some need a certificate or a 2-year degree. So are you having those conversations? You're nodding your head yes, but I want you to answer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry.
And also, what additional plans might you have to have this conversation? I'm not suggesting that the state build an Uber or anything, but I think it's incumbent upon each of the three that we are funding to make it more efficient. I can't convene that. I need you to do that.
Well, sir, I can tell you right now, we have a commitment. We have a preferred relationship with the community colleges. We have articulation agreements. We meet regularly. There's a sincere relationship there that, quite frankly, doesn't exist. There are many university heads that don't have a high regard for community colleges. I'll be honest with you. Throughout my career, we do. We look at them as valued partners.
We, meaning
the 14 presidents, all of us. Our students who transfer in from community colleges are very successful at our universities, and we need to do more to create as seamless a pathway as possible, that as you complete at one institution like a community college, you can come right in. I will also tell you that we're looking at a whole variety of ways of how we operate to provide that access. And how we're looking at all of our programs and how we even partner across, breaking down the silos across our own 14 universities. My general observation in being the chancellor for 7 months is while we've had a system for 35 years, I think only now are we acting like a system. Previously, we were kind of 14 universities that generally liked each other. And I think when you look at things from a systemic standpoint, it's a different lens. And we're being sharp to that lens and looking at how we can create what I'm calling an academic marketplace across the universities so they can leverage what they do best. Because they all do different things differently, and they all have strengths. And so how do we export that or cross-port that across institutions? What I'm talking about is how if a student wants to get a certain course that's not where they are, they don't have to transfer. Can they get it online or in a different way from another university, or a certificate, or a major, or a minor? Those are the kinds of conversations we're having right now, and that's very energizing.
Let me ask you a two-part question while the green light is still on. Geographic differentiation, which,
Yes,
which you've talked about. I'm thinking of a good friend of mine who has 3 daughters. They're each in different parts of the state in system schools, Slippery Rock, Westchester, and Clarion.
Mm-hmm.
He lives in Montgomery County.
Wow.
Okay, so there's no geographic interest. I say no. Very often there's not a geographic interest to stay local. They're going to another school for either the aesthetics that they saw when they toured, or perhaps an academic offering that is available. So I'm not sure that there's a geographic differentiation so much as there is, say, with the legislature, where I need to be much more sensitive to the people thinking in Montgomery County than in Center County or Clarion County. I'd be interested in your comment on that, but also let me ask you a real duh question. What would happen if there wasn't a system and you had 14 universities that worked independent? And you said that you had that kind of where you didn't cooperate with each other, but you provoked the question.
You'd have a lot more meetings with presidents than one chancellor. There'd be more meetings. There'd be more silos. There'd be more possibly competition versus collaboration. I'm just letting you know that's one reason American higher education throughout the whole country, from about the late 60s into the early 80s, every state coalesced into systems of one kind or the other. And over about, I want to say about 70% of college students are at universities are in systems. In fact, I think you understand Pennsylvania is one of the few states that doesn't have an overarching coordinating entity for all of higher education. While I don't believe everybody has to have a bachelor's degree to have a great life or livelihood, they do need a post-secondary credential of some type, something after high school.
I think we all understand that in today's world.
And
sure.
so I think we lack a coordinating entity across. There while we enjoy a very strong relationship with the community colleges, and different presidents will tell you they have different relationships with some of the other universities, it's not nearly as integrated or coordinated as I've seen in other states, and this is my 4th state in my almost 40-year career. So that is a lost opportunity for collaboration, and for particularly, let me point out something that isn't talked about here today, is how are we a solution to what challenges the state? I mean, and that's what you should expect, I think, particularly from public higher ed, but why not all of higher ed? How are we solutions to your greatest challenges? And that isn't talked about, and then where's the investment to that? But with 100,000 students, did you know we graduated 6,700 people in May in STEM-H degrees? That's moving the needle on helping, I think, the Commonwealth be healthier and be more competitive, particularly in technology, engineering, and science. That's the kind of things that I think we should be expected to achieve every year for the state.
So I hear you saying that you think that the system really provides great value.
Tremendous value, and in fact, I think we should coordinate and harness all of the post-secondary enterprises in this state to serve the state.
Just leave you with a thought, and the lights are off. But we don't have a lot of educational facilities above I-80.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's a real problem for Pennsylvania. So, thank you.
Yes, sir. I know, being from Clarion, I know that.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Mensch. Senator Killian. Thank you, and thanks for being here. I want to follow up on Representative Scavella. Cheyney is in my district.
Yes,
I
sir.
live about a mile and a half, 2 miles from the campus, and frankly, I'm offended that you didn't stop by my house, Mario, when you were at the campus. My wife would have made you a nice Italian meal.
I don't think you were here yet.
Good point. But on Cheyney, I see real opportunities with Cheyney. We know they have significant challenges both in enrollment and in graduation rates. But if you look where that school is, it is in a beautiful rural area. Many of my colleagues from rural areas don't believe Delaware County has a rural area, but we do. And close to Westchester, close to Philadelphia. Talk about population. I mean, it's all right there. So I think there's some real opportunities for Cheyney. Two questions. One is very basic. The governor's budget has $1 million, his proposed budget for Cheyney. I'm curious of what that is specifically is for, if you know. And two, what's the system currently doing to help us bring Cheyney back to where Cheyney needs to be?
I have no special knowledge of the purpose other than it's dedicated to advance and support Cheyney. I just haven't had a chance to talk to the governor about what the thinking was on that. In terms of what's going on right now, you're absolutely right that Cheyney, under President Walton's leadership, first of all, we're very fortunate that he has come at this time because he completed an extremely successful career as an executive in healthcare. So I think he brings a very business, entrepreneurial perspective, as well as he was a long-serving member of the Board of Governors and the trustees of Cal U. And so he has seen higher ed and has a beautiful lens on going forward. The other thing, I give a real credit to the employees of Cheyney and the alumni of Cheyney, because they're putting their love of loyalty to the university against greater than personal interests. I mean, the employees are really being very flexible. They're doing their best to work with the president because they know at this point it has to have a turnaround. He is committed to reducing the budget, to increasing enrollment, stabilizing and increasing enrollment, and meeting and exceeding all accreditation responsibilities. And he's on a track to do that. I do have to point out, though, and I would love to share this if the Senate's interested, that I have a list of the 139 universities that grant bachelor's degrees in this state. There's 139, public, private, for-profit. You know Cheyney's not the smallest? Cheyney's 115. So I'd like to give a larger perspective here. There's a larger framework of higher education in this state that never gets discussed. By the way, number 6 is Westchester. And 10 of our 14 universities are in the top 25. I'm a little disappointed that Clarion is 26th. And as the former president there, I talked to the current president that he's got to get to 25 next year. But the point is, we are a large system. We have game. We have large enrollments. And we need to look at these issues of quality and value in a holistic manner, or we're not talking about the right things. But I'm very optimistic about Cheyney. It's a lot of hard work, and we will continue to report on success. I will tell you, though, so you're not surprised, it is possible, despite best efforts and hard work, that Cheyney may post a smaller enrollment this fall. But what you need to ask at that point is, are they a more qualified enrollment? Are they more prepared to graduate? Because it's not simply the number of students we recruit, it's what's our graduation rates. And we're determined that those graduation rates will continue to stay significantly above the national average. I'm not happy with where we're at, but I like to see the perspective. But that's what I would encourage you to ask next time, is you can ask the numbers, but ask about the quality and the experience in the graduation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Killian. Senator Vogel, followed by Senator Vlahovic.
Here.
Oh, sorry.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Fine, thanks.
Good. Brian, congratulations, IUP. My stepdaughter goes there. She'll graduate in May. Great university, great experience she's had there for 4 years. So congratulations as well on that. Also, I'd like to talk briefly, it's been mentioned on and off a little bit about your degree programs that mesh with community colleges and things like that. And we had a talk the other day. You were obviously a faculty member, whatever, with Dr. Reber from Beaver County Community College, and how I've had many conversations with him and how he's doing a great job there, but how you're working together to collaborate classes so nobody has to retake Reading 101 2 or 3 times to get a degree. So could you elaborate on how you're working and how that whole deals working out with the collaborating with community colleges?
Yes, sir. We have policies in place, and we're working through them to actualize them to streamline pathways that students can go from community college into university and not retake the same material they've already mastered. And that's a tough thing because at the same time we have to ensure that the students meet the prerequisites and that they'll be successful at the university. So there is always a fair concern that the university faculty want to ensure that the students are prepared, and at the same time, though, we do have to call out that community college education is a fabulous education and it does well prepare them. I think you're going to continue to see transfer rates go up, and of the 27% of our transfer students, almost half of them are coming from Pennsylvania community colleges. We've got, so different presidents would tell you the different relationships they have in their regions with 2-year and 4-year institutions to drive that pipeline. And there's a real high energy to do that now. Again, with our traditional pipelines shifting and changing, I think more than ever before, we're trying to bring down those barriers that you talked about. And for, include working with President Reber at Beaver County and a consortium of universities. We have, when I was the president at Clarion, we had relationships with all the ones in the Pittsburgh metro area, because we offered also a lot of online learning. So you're going to see through online, and that's where the students need us. Someone finishes an associate's degree, they want to get out in the workplace. They're not going to go up to Clarion or anywhere really. They want to do it online. And so you're going to see more of that coming out of our schools.
Okay, I appreciate that working together. Like, I think that's a great way to, like you said, keep the pipeline going and things like that. But one other question I have, due to your budget constraints and all you have, and I'm concerned, I'm not concerned, I guess, it's an issue I see. Being in the Pittsburgh media market, I see different universities putting up fancy television ads on Pittsburgh TV stations. I mean, they're very nice, they're very well done. I mean, I'm sure they're very expensive, and it's very expensive to advertise on the 6 o'clock news in a Pittsburgh media market. And what is how does the advertising budget for universities work different? They all have the same budget, or
no, sir,
explain how that works? I mean, because I see billboards I just was always curious, that's all.
Sure, yes, sir. The way it's worked before, and again, this is the interesting question that we're looking at, is where do we act as a system, united as 14, and where do we act as an individual, with a unique history and reputation and message? That's a balancing act. And I think right now, each university is working on its brand, its reputation, how does it communicate what it offers, and in what way. So I think, if you had the list, there would be a variety of levels of investment. There would also be a variety of levels of strategy. What we're doing at the system area, and we briefed the presidents on it yesterday, we're looking at consortium pricing to look at leveraging the best contracts for however a university wants to communicate. They do need to communicate, no matter how competitive or not an environment is, because students need to have information about how to make some choices on who to go visit, to go to college. A lot of these messages are go to college.
Yeah.
Then the second message is pick us. and then you go down the road. Now, in terms of the mix and the variety and what's effective, the presidents with their teams are constantly looking at that. If you'd like to get more of a specific, I could hand that over to the college president at the table. Would you like that?
Yeah, I'd like to know that, because obviously, do you have any kind of matrix, I guess, as well to judge? You spend X number of $1,000 on a TV commercial and you get X return for it? I mean, that's what we're always judging everything on up here is, how's that done? Okay, I'll listen.
Well, that is how we view marketing. Which approaches are going to give us the most bang for our buck with limited resources? I've been at CHIP for 6 months. When I arrived at CHIP, I had a marketing budget of $250,000. So think about what I can do with that. Not a whole lot if I'm buying media in the Pittsburgh market. So I then have to think about how I can get the most bang for my buck. I also didn't have a videographer on my team, so I couldn't tell my story through video at all. I was telling it through print media that I was, for the most part, mailing out. So I had to look at all of the variables. So is it a staffing issue? Is it a media issue? Is it a social media issue? So how can I use the different forms to really capture my audiences? And then I have to look at who I'm talking to. Am I talking with prospective students? Am I talking with their parents? Am I talking with folks like you? All of those require different approaches. So it is a complicated puzzle, and each university has to do it differently based upon who their community is and who they're trying to reach and how they're trying to reach them.
But each school has the same advertising budget?
No, sir. I can tell you right now, they're not the same dollars. It's not the same strategy or approach. We are beginning to have conversations, again, as a system. Do we want to do any consortium vendors or pricing to get the best value? But we haven't, it hasn't even occurred to me yet, should we? I have to tell you, one size doesn't fit all. Every university does need, and the president does need the latitude on the best, most effective way, because I can tell you right now, it's about your mission and your target population. And they vary. I mean, for example, Clarion, with 22% of the students completing their entire degree online, there's actually quite a bit of that we used to do on social media and online. You don't do a billboard to really sell an online program. You go online. So every what you're seeing here is evolving. We are united on the 3 priorities the board has set for us, but the way we achieve those are going to be distinctive to each university. So I can tell you the budget's range. I don't know those dollars. If you like, I can get those for you. But I think that they are varied, and they should be varied. East Stroudsburg should be able to have its own approach to marketing because it's different from SHIP. The key is effectiveness. And the key is, do we have analytics, and are we tracking them, and are we meeting our desired results in terms of a strategic enrollment plan? That's what I would suggest you ask from us.
Okay, I'm asking that. Then could you please get me the information? I would like to see it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Vogel. Senator Vlahovic, followed by Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over here, Madam Chancellor, others on the panel. You had a review done, NCHEMS, acronyms, you know. And it was a strategic review. Now, their number one recommendation, from what I understand, was to retain and ensure sustainability of state systems capacity in every region to carry out its historic mission to serve students and communities. I have to go back to what Senator Mensch said, that people who go to these universities go to them for different reasons. One, it was maybe their parents went there. Number 2, probably location. 3, costs, for different reasons. But I don't know that it's so much regional from that community type picture. I was surprised that was such a big recommendation of theirs to maintain that, especially when we have, for example, up in Clarion, which is a beautiful town and a beautiful area, and I've met you up there several times when you were there, with the declining student population you had up there. And quite honestly, if that university would close, it would destroy that town up there. So when we put these universities together, we wanted to create a type of environment and a learning environment and a place for students to go and, you know, really find themselves in a lot of different ways. But now we're, like in everything else, we're in dollar crunch. And I just think that we have to start thinking out of the box a little bit with what we want to do with one of our state schools. Because honestly, I think our number one priority with regards to education should be our state schools. Now, it doesn't mean we continue to fund every one of them if they're just failing or their population keeps decreasing. But that would be my number one priority. The community colleges have kind of taken some of your students, I believe, because of cost factors. So just as an analysis, have you thought about studying the community colleges? I mean, there's 14 of them in the state, and we lack where some of them are too. But the cost of going for 2 years to community college, and most the children's community college, they pay tuition and fees. They don't pay room and board. But the difference between the tuition and fees at a community college versus the tuition and fees, if someone lives, say, in the town of Clarion, what the difference would be in the cost there. Because it has to be factored into there when you're trying to think out of the box of what's going on. And I think you need to look at that. Also, purchasing power. as far as the 14 schools together under your jurisdiction, are they buying all on their own without coming to you, or do you have one place, a one-stop shop where if they want to buy anything they want to buy, or you come and say, hey, you have to come to this part, the central office, more or less, and we will help secure, because we can get better price, we buy in volume, or does each school do it on their own?
Well, let me say that we have a variety of ways that we do procurement. There is consortium procurement, and we've seen great savings in consortium where all 14 universities go together to drive the price down on a common good. You know, for example, we all have Pepsi on our campuses. That drives the greatest value versus, you know, letting Coke in on one campus or whatever. So that's something as simple as a soda contract, and that's a lot of soda consumed on those campuses, all the way to health care. There's a system-wide consortium agreement on who provides our health care. Those are the top two, but we have a whole list. And yes, we're constantly, and even yesterday, talking with the presidents, looking at what are innovative ways that we can create consortiums. And this does come out of the system review report, voluntarily buy in to get great value, or where is there maximum value when all 14 do something. But yes, there's a constant discussion here. For example, we're getting great value in our libraries to the Keystone Library Network, which is a consortium that is not just system universities, but other universities as well. So consortium on maximum driving of value is common. It's not enough, and we're looking at more. And that gets back to some of Senator Denneman's earlier comments. Back to community colleges, their biggest reason they can drive a lower price, let me be clear, is the traditional formula of 1/3 from the state, 1/3 from a district, and the student pays 1/3. Now, there's been erosion of that to some extent, but I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that one sector is inherently superior in their ability to drive a lower price. There's always a formula and an answer to the price that the students pay, and it's some form of cost minus subsidy.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vlahovic. Senator Wagner, followed by Senator Schwank.
Good afternoon. I have four handouts I'd like to give to you. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Brian, I'm interested. What are you studying at IUP?
I'm a junior political science and economics dual major.
Okay. So you have some financial education classes. Okay. We're gonna walk through some stuff today, which I'd like to share with you. So what I've done is I pulled up this is the financial statement dated 6/30/17. Now, the chancellor told us that the average salary was $117,000. You know, and I'm formally requesting, and if we have to do by subpoena, I would like a list of every employee in the state system, and I would like to know what their W-2 earnings were for last year.
Yes,
so
sir.
I'm formally, Mr. Chairman, I'm formally on the record. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, Brian, what I'm going to do, this is a balance sheet, and it's page 7 of the financial report. And so I've served on the Appropriations Committee for 4 years, and I've asked a lot of questions, and I mean, this is just an exercise in, honestly, in silliness, so to speak. But I'm going to drill down on something. But if you go down to halfway down the page, it talks about the net pension liability. And if you go to the far right, when Chancellor Brogan was in front of the committee in 2015, I started asking questions about the outstanding pension liability. At that time, it was $798 million. So $800 million. So in 2016, it went up 17.5% to $938 million. And then last year, it went up. Now, as of 2017, it's $1,022,000. And so that's an 8.9% increase. But if you go right above that line where it says net pension liability, those are post-retirement health care costs. That would be health insurance after someone retires in the system. So I have a question for the Chancellor and others at the table. But anyway, I want to highlight that when the pension liability in 2015 was $800 million, the actual post-retirement health care cost was $250 million more. Okay? So I appreciate all the students here and faculty, but you're about ready to get a financial education because your system, and Senator Eichelberger, and I have had extensive conversations. Your system is done in 4 years. You are out of runway. You are out of oxygen. And the taxpayers are not going to continue to pump money into this system. So the reason I'm interested in the salaries of all the employees is because that you may not know this or be aware of this, but there was a swim coach that retired at Westchester University. And in 2000, in fact, now I have another article that I'd like to give you. And the swim coach, and this was almost a pretty famous story, but in 2015, the swim coach at Westchester made $420,000. Those were his W-2 earnings. Now, there's a difference between salary and W-2 earnings, and I believe his salary was $80,000 or $90,000, but his W-2 earnings were $420,000. So then, in 2016, he made $313,000. So Chancellor Brogan was in front of this committee, I think 2 years ago, and these are my questions. So I asked the Chancellor this question. When the swim coach retires, will his pension be based on his base salary or his total compensation W-2? The Chancellor responded that it depends which pension program he's in. So then I went in and I said, here's where my brain goes into overdrive. I went on to say that if the pension is based on his base salary, that may be reasonable. But if his pension is based on his total compensation, which I think will be the case, that means a swim coach making over $300,000 per year could potentially get 2/3 of $300,000, which is $200,000 a year for the rest of his life. And he responded, I'll research the answer to this question next week and get back to you with the answer, which I didn't get the answer, but the swim coach just retired in 2016, and so we are actually looking right now to find out, what the number is, but, I can tell you what the number is. It's 2/3 of what his 3-year salary is. So you are aware that the teachers and the faculty at the universities are unionized.
Very aware, yes.
So the union has done a great job, and I think some of the professors and teachers, have just been part of the system, but the union bosses have made sure that everybody has been highly taken care of, and they're driving you into bankruptcy. So for those of you that think your schools are going to be around 4 years from now, it ain't going to be around. And I could tell you something, that we are going to stop pumping money into this system, and it's ridiculous. And I don't know what your student debts are, and I don't know if anything I'm telling you alarms you or resonates that, that there's code red here. This is the problem. And we have been here, I've been here 4 years, and we haven't accomplished anything. And it's just, the monster continues to get bigger, and these numbers are just going to get bigger. So we're going to be out of oxygen. But, so, I have a question for the Chancellor. On the unionized, on the collective bargaining contracts, and I asked, Chancellor Brogan this, do you know how many grievances you had last year with unionized, employees?
Answer for a second round.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in.
I don't have that data. I'll get that data. Many, a lot.
Okay. Well, I'd like to know the exact
apologize.
number.
I just don't have that number.
And I'd like to know what you spent in legal fees defending those grievances.
We can do that, sir.
So I have more on the second round, but thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wagner. Senator Schwenk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's still morning. Good morning. Thank you for being here today, everybody. Very impressive, the information that you're able to provide. I was here early, but I asked to be late on the questioning list because I serve as a member of the Board of Governors. So I do have sort of a different perspective, perhaps, and I'm interested in hearing what my colleagues say before I get my turn up at bat. I'd certainly also like to acknowledge the fact that there are an awful lot of students here. There's some university presidents. I see Dr. Hawkinson here, who is the president of Kutztown, and certainly Molly Gallagher, who is my colleague now on the Board of Governors, And Molly's from Kutztown. She serves as student body president there. So Molly, thanks for being here as well. And I know we're going to meet later and talk about some of these things. Just to explain this, in terms of a budget hearing, you would think that we always talk about numbers, but what you're hearing more often is policy, because policy drives funding, right? So I just wanted everybody to understand that sometimes that's where our focus is. This is an opportunity for us to discuss those things. Sometimes a deeper dive necessarily than we need to go into in terms of details, but nevertheless, that happens. I want to focus a bit on the NCHEMS report too. And I recall, I'm not always in person at the board meetings, but I'm on the phone. And by the way, Senator Ament is our other representative to the Board of Governors as well. And the three focus that we talked about, ensuring student success, leveraging university strengths, transforming the governance and leadership structure, I think we boiled it down to the essence of what we needed to do. The NCHEMS report, I'm not a big fan of reports, but boy, I think that has driven some very, very positive change for us in terms of what we need to do to revitalize the system and constantly be changing, because that's what we have to do. What the demographics will always change, the fiscal outlook will always change in terms of the economy. We've got to be nimble enough, and using this as leverage, I think, will be very helpful. One thing that I would like to say, in light of some other comments that have been made, those three goals, none of them will happen without faculty. None of them will happen without students in a community that's engaged. None of them will happen without administrators, a system, governance board that is really interested in making that change too. So it's very important that we make that point. But one thing that I would like to ask, particularly of you, Brian, and our university president, how have you seen the results of the report? How has that trickled down or filtered in terms of what you see in terms of change and how you operate, or how your education is proceeding?
I think Chancellor Whitney earlier talked about the timeline for approval for academic programs. And that I think is really one substantive way in which things are changing. So after the NCHEMS report was issued, as interim chancellor, she really sort of took the reins, and these three strategic priorities were established by the Board of Governors with her support. And we've been working through them with a series of task groups and really addressing the problems as we're coming upon them, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to figure out what all the problems are and eventually get to them. So I really want to applaud the system for its ability to be nimble as it received those results and is responding to them as timely as possible as we're working through the issues and identifying them.
So you are seeing some of those impacts in terms of how you're a relatively new president, by the way, congratulations. We're glad to see you on board. But you are seeing that there's, some change in outlook and the decisions that you can make.
Absolutely. The ability to have programs approved in a more timely manner will permit each university to be able to serve its region and the state much better.
I can remember board meetings where we spent what felt like hours reviewing some of the different programs that we're looking at. So that's good to hear. I think it's made us more efficient too. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of having the unique perspective of both serving as a board member and a student. So first I'll speak from my board member's hat, and I'll say that the change has been, I believe, optimistic and positive for our board and for the whole entire system, and I think it's being noticed across the universities. And that's much due in part to the culture change of our leadership and cultivating that to the best of its ability. And we've had investment from every single one of our board members, and that is absolutely paramount as we're pushing this message forward and as we're creating a new culture of collaboration versus competition. And I believe that was one of the main parts in adopting those three priorities at our board meeting back in October. From the student perspective, I will say honestly that your average student isn't completely aware of what the Board of Governors does or who they are and what they do. They're more concerned about getting their degree and going to class every day and trying to get the best grades they can. So as far as from the student perspective there, I can say that I do think students are realizing the shift in the theme that we're trying to create. A lot of more students are caring about the system, about what policies are going on, and most importantly, their tuition rates and the fees at their universities. And a lot of student leaders are heavily invested in that. One of the roles I also serve in is serving as the chair for the Board of Student Government Presidents. So each of the presidents, and a few of them are here today for our universities, they are completely aware, and I think they're also in support of the 3 priorities and this new theme of collaboration as well. So I would say the change is very positive, and I think we're moving in a very optimistic direction.
Great. Would you indulge me, Mr. Chair? Just one more question. So, serving on the Board of Governors, one of the things that we're going to have a meeting to talk about is tuition increase, possibly. Chancellor Whitney, will you talk a bit, in light of what the governor has proposed? Obviously the legislature can do something different than that, but what are you thinking now?
Well, again, very appreciative of being included at all, because I never forget the tough situation the state's in. And I want to start with that. And at the same time, I think it's my job to provide great clarity on the current cost to operate, so that there's nothing misleading or misunderstood. The board rightfully suggested, the system board in October, that to meet our costs of going forward next year, we would need an additional $73 million. There's 2 ways we get money. It's from the state or the student. And the other thing we can do, we've talked about, had good talk today, increased efficiency of what we're doing. We are no longer in a position to cut programs because much of the programs we're talking about are the very ones that ensure student success. We are eliminating academic programs that aren't meeting student interest or industry interest. We've talked about that. So there's a $73 million request on the table, minus the 15 leaves a big gap. I will tell you that 50 of that 73 are solidly around compensation and benefit requirements. Requirements, 90% of which are mandated by multi-year union agreements. I am not criticizing union agreements. People have done that today. I respect the different views. I'm letting you know where they're coming from, because so I have to make that distinction, because sometimes I will call out the culture in Pennsylvania that to even speak about a union contract, some people think that somehow you're criticizing it. So I have to do that extra preamble there. But there is an obligation here. It's a multi-year obligation. It wasn't made by the presidents. It was made by outside groups because of the way in which we do our contracting. And there is that obligation. And both you, Senator, and Brian are going to have a tough discussion. We're going to have that later in our cycle about how we meet these obligations. And it is difficult. It will be a combination of state and student. It always has been. It always will be.
I guess we'll be discussing that further later. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Schwank. We have limited time for a second round to try to stay on schedule. We have 5 members who have asked for more time. We can accommodate that. It needs to stay to 5 minutes per member. All right, please. Starting with Senator Dinniman.
The bioengineering program at Westchester is a wonderful example in our own area, because we're the center of the biopharmaceutical industry. But I wanted to ask you something, because what we cannot forget is the key role that liberal arts and our core curriculum plays. What we know is that we're in the fastest period of change. The rapidity of change is the fastest in all of human history. And so we can train someone, but the major obligation we have is to train someone to be a continual and lifetime learner. And so while technical education is vital, the role that our core curriculum, liberal arts, plays in helping someone re-educate themselves for their life is also important. I wonder if you would speak to that.
Well, you did such a good job, Senator. I think absolutely every credential at our universities have first a core foundational experience, commonly known as the general education, which is founded in the essential arts and humanities and sciences. So no matter what your advanced area of study, whether it's nursing or teaching or business, or any other profession or a liberal arts credential in and of itself, you start with the classic liberal arts foundation that builds upon your ability to be successful in what I call advanced study. More to your point, I want to try to help people understand, because there's a misunderstanding about how wonderful our liberal arts credentials are. Did you know in Pennsylvania that our liberal arts majors get great jobs? They graduate, they get great jobs. In fact, 16% of our humanities majors are working in management, business, and finance because employers want people with the kind of skill set, disposition, and preparation that you've just described. 4% are in IT, 12% are in sales, 10% are in education. So really, that is a tremendous credential. Is it right for everyone? No. The key is getting our students in the right area that can ignite their passion and help them be successful. But liberal arts is a foundation to all of our learning, and people who get liberal arts credentials get great jobs and do well in Pennsylvania.
Well, just wanted to state that because technical education is important.
It is very important.
And STEM education is important, but the real job is to teach students to be learners through their lifetime and how to learn.
Yes, sir.
And that's what a good liberal arts education is all about. The second question is one that Senator Mensch and Senator Volkovich also mentioned, and that is we do need a state, in my judgment, that there is some value in having a state coordinating council on education. People mentioned Penn State campus next to a state university campus or not far away. The report that Governor Corbett had a number of years ago, all those recommendations sit on a shelf somewhere in someone's office, and some of it talked about the part of coordination. You have all of these different universities, and each has a mission, but we don't have it put together as a total entity of what we do with post-secondary education, from career, 2 years to 4 years to doctoral and postdoctoral. And so I just want to say to my colleagues that anyone who wants to work on that, I'm prepared to put in legislation. And I was wondering what your thoughts on that are.
An enthusiastic supporter. It's beyond my pay grade. I do not believe I have the authority to convene all of higher education in this state to the task that you've suggested. And if I'm wrong, I would look to be corrected, but that's my view. I do believe we could do a better job with both the state's resources and the students if we had an overarching coordinating board. I've worked in other states that have it. I personally believe in this and would welcome the opportunity to work with everyone who has this as an interest.
Well, I will ask Senator Mensch if he wants to co-sponsor it. He and I both co-sponsor many things together. But the point is, we, again, just like the mandates we have, there are ways to save money when we don't have the money directly to give, and one is to have a better coordination and to have some priorities. Randy, you're right when you talk about the state's own system and our obligation to it. We really need to do that because education is very complex. Finally, is that related to all this is one of the greatest needs are people now in advanced manufacturing. Some need to have advanced degrees and some need to have a 1 year or 2 year degree, and we have to have a totality of a system and not forget the liberal arts either. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Dinniman. Senator Scavellis, followed by Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want, I was thinking while I was sitting here, I says, it shouldn't just be one school. You've got the best folks out there. You don't need a budget for advertising. You have them right here. If all the students in every one of the schools went out and, I'm looking at your numbers. In 2010, we were at 119,513. Today, our population is 102,572. And remember now, approximately almost 3,000 is one school, and that's Westchester that picked up the number. So, it's not impossible. If your ambassadors are right here in this room, it reduces costs. You can take that advertising budget at some point and put it to reducing costs even more and tuitions even more. So to the alumni, if you're watching this, to the students back home, you want to reduce your education, the cost of your education. Go back to your high schools where you graduated from. Take a day and speak to the students and say why you're there. And by them coming to that school, what it would do for you. That's, you can lobby us for more dollars. It works in some cases if we have it. But sometimes we don't, and there are tough times now. But we need to make it ways, and for example, with costs, I'm going to support Senator Dinniman, what he said earlier, about treating just like the state relateds, so that you can save dollars on your procurement and all that stuff. So that's another way.
Yes, sir.
But I plead with you, reach out to your schools that you graduated from. Go visit the schools. Say, well, you're getting a great education, promote your school. Because when you promote your school, especially in the classroom too, even to the professors, promote your school. And if you do that, you're going to see great results.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Scavella. Senator Vogel, followed by Senator Wagner.
Thank you again. Just touching on what Senator Scavella is talking about, any good salesman and any good sales company in the United States, if you get a student to come to the school, you get a tuition break. How's that sound for a start, for upping enrollment? Every student, you bring one student on board, you get X number of dollars in a tuition break. How's that sound?
Senator, there have been different approaches like that, and there are approaches, similar versions of what's occurring now. Everything from energizing alumni to become alumni recruiters, to you get a discount at the end of a certain period if you bring somebody in. So actually the universities are in various ways doing and experimenting with a variety. Also, quite frankly, online media. You might have seen that TV ad, but probably the target population that'll come to that university, there's a huge complex approach. So we don't have time to get into all of the novel and interesting ways that each of the universities are trying to get their word out, and inspire people to come. So I mean, that's the first thing. But yes, sir, we are doing that. But obviously, I always like to go back to good common sense, and definitely appreciate the comments we're hearing today.
Good, very good. But I have a question and another sort of kind of disturbing issue with me, and that's the graduation rates between 4 years and 6 years.
Yes, sir.
Back in the day when I was many days ago, if you didn't graduate in 4 years, you were considered a bum or something. I mean, and now today, I'm not knocking anybody, but I know times have changed and things have changed, but why do our graduation rates, I mean, the amount of money it costs you to go to school for an extra year or two, from 4 years to 6 years, could be anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000 of extra student debt. How come students aren't graduating in 4 years? I got on the state relateds last year about this too, and it disturbs me to a degree that we could do it years ago and we can't do it now. Why?
Well, because one of the reasons is we have a much more diverse population of students. You get people who make all kinds of decisions. Sometimes people stop out for good reasons that I might value as a good. Right. Some are frivolous. I mean, I had somebody say they couldn't come one semester because they got a flat tire, but then this spun off into this whole story about how their life unraveled. Wasn't all that impressed with the answer, but I mean, but there are some times that there are good reasons people need to stop out. And I think the key here is driving more to the 4-year completion and as what we're going to call timely completion. But I do have to respect, for some of our students, there are good solid reasons to take a break, to come back, to be more successful, not so much with others, and we're trying to work through that. That does require student support programs and the engagement of our faculty and staff with the students, because it is almost a one-on-one kind of excursion to sit there and keep them going so that we can get to that completion, because the most expensive college degree is the one you don't get.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I'm not knocking anyone or anything. I just,
Oh, no, sir.
It's
a good observation,
I mean,
but I think we have to be sensitive about what we're really seeing here.
And I understand, students have, come from broken homes and things like that and have to stop out to go get a job or something to help family situations out and things like that. But I just was wondering what your perspective was and why you think the numbers keep going up. Because obviously, at the end of the day, it's the amount of extra debt you add on. We talk about student debt and how much student debt impacts students going forward, how many more years they have to work in their life to pay off their student debt, and to add another $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 worth of debt for an extra year or two of school, is a cycle that
it's not good.
Doesn't work out at the end. Yeah, you're right, exactly. So, okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vogel. Senator Wagner, followed by Senator Vlahovic.
Okay, thank you. To wrap up, you're going to get the salary information.
Yes, sir.
I would like to know the number of grievances, union grievances. I would like, if there's 3-year history on total grievances, and if you could break down the grievances by school. So if there's 500, then it would be broken down by school, what the outside legal costs were. And I don't know if you employ, in-house counsel that handles some of this stuff, and of course the salary. I'm interested in a detailed snapshot of, if you could supply that, of how your post-retirement benefits, and the current and in your information booklet you sent out, it showed the percent. It compared your contributions by faculty versus what the state is contributing, and then it showed the private sector. And then I'm focused on yesterday. We had a hearing with the Auditor General, and the Auditor General showed us a chart that showed that his benefits as a percentage of payroll to $1 of payroll was 75%. And in the private sector, it runs typically in the 40 to 45% range. So, I just applied 50% to the whole system, all state employees, about 70,000 state employees, 180,000 school teachers. And if we went from the 75%, and in some cases, the liquor store workers are at 89.9, the judiciary and that system is over $1, it's over 100%. And so our benefit costs are wildly out of control. But again, if I applied the 50%, and I didn't go back to 45, I applied 50% against, the typical average out there, and the average is easily 75% or greater. It's an additional cost for benefits of $3.9 billion per year. So, and in some areas that it's higher. So I'm very interested in a complete, report on the post-retirement health care costs. So I have to ask these questions. So when I look at that kind of a liability for post-retirement health care costs versus the pension liability, it tells me that people that are retiring in the PASHI system are getting health care costs or health care coverage for the rest of their lives. Is that an accurate statement?
This is my phone a friend. Who, go ahead.
In general, yes. We have made some changes recently so that for new employees, they will not be receiving retiree health care benefits. But I also should point out that our retiree health care liability covers all employees, whereas only about half of our employees are in the pension plan. So our pension liabilities are only associated with half our employees. That's why those numbers are not, that's why the ratio of those numbers is so different.
So, Brian, the education today is that this is a system that was set up years ago. It is doomed for failure. The numbers are going to sink. Financially, there's just no path out of this unless you just keep throwing more money in. And as I travel around the state, people are very upset about the school taxes on their homes, and then I also hear regularly. Last year, I heard from a lot of students when the tuition increases went up, and that coincided with union contracts going up. So, and many of the students here today, and potentially you also, have a lot of student debt, and I don't know how you're ever going to pay this student debt, but it has been your student debt. What you're going to pay and what you're going to be saddled with in your parents and whoever co-signed, they cannot file bankruptcy. So the system is going to track you down and your parents and whoever for the rest of your lives. And honestly, there are some people that are retiring out of the system. It's a system, but I'm only the messenger here. And so I'm just telling you the facts that this system that was set up is at your expense, and you are going to pay for it for a long period of time. And a lot of the young people here in this room, and I don't know how you're going to go out into the real workplace, find a job, try to have a lifestyle, and in addition pay your student debts. It isn't work. One thing that I am going to work on is potential opportunities for employers to hire students with student debt and figure some way that we can help you. But this is, I'm only the messenger here, and I see these numbers and it's just like, holy cow. So, but I appreciate you being here today, and if you could get that information, it would be helpful.
We will do that, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wagner. Senator Vlahovic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And because we have a lack of time keeping on a schedule, I'm just going to make a couple comments. And, as we've gone through this hearing today, situation we have, and we have this across, nobody's done a bang-up job with anything, even including the General Assembly over a period of years. Okay? We all own this. but there's a realization here that we have to face. And it always comes down to the end. We have to decide what dollars we're going to give. But you have to consider your PASHE debt that you have, looking at the big picture, declining enrollment that you have, lack of control on costs of salary benefits and pension costs, and some of that, we have responsibility for. You got about $1.8 billion, I understand, in infrastructure cost that you have to do. Spending on advertisement, me personally, if you get down and you prioritize, that's the last place I'm going. Best advertising is word of mouth. And I know that I have 5 schools in my areas. They go up on that part of the state, and I have kids coming to me all the time. Hey, I'm going to Slippery Rock. Hey, I'm going to Clarion. They know. So we don't need to spend money on that. Control curriculum costs for the students. My daughter has more credits than she would ever need. Now, she went to a state-related school. They kept changing all the time. Well, now you need this to get to there, and this would be better for you. That's not right. When these kids come in to school, they have an idea of where they're going and what the school expects out of them. We can't have, and if it's professors, sorry if you take offense to this, quit changing what they need. That's added cost for these kids, and they got to pay for it. Because what you got to take into consideration is the students, parents, school personnel in general, the school as a whole by what you stand for, and state subsidy we have to give you. Inventory of facilities. I mean, I don't know. We've built some new buildings on some of these campuses, some of the older ones. We got to make decisions what we're going to do. We can't, if we're just keeping them open to keep them open, maybe we have to close them because of cost. Centralized procurement at a higher level. You said you were looking in that, Madam Chancellor, and I think you need to do that. Buying in purchasing power. And then, of course, I don't know, and centralized payroll, benefits administration, labor relations, legal services, construction support, and your IT system. If it's good, it can handle all that centralized. I think these are things that you need to take into account. And there's a lot of problems. You don't own them all by yourself. There's a lot of people responsible for a lot of these things here. But in the end, what I really care about is the kids. Getting a good education in a good environment and getting a fair deal. And the debt that they're coming out with, it's staggering for a lot of these kids. And so we have to take this into consideration, all or do a part to their, but I'll end in this. I've always thought teachers at every capacity are worth their weight in gold. They have more influence on our kids all through their life than sometimes we do. And they may be worth their weight in gold, but we can't afford to pay them their weight in gold. It's a service, just like in police work. I risked my life for 27 years. I was worth my weight in gold too, but no one paid me that weight in gold. But they gave me a price. It's all a matter of service. The kids come first. And everybody has to start thinking about that in General Assembly and in your own system too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Vlahovic. One last comment, Senator Scavella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, you were very impressive. I neglected to mention the young man's name that I went to visit, and Corey English from Cheyney. And well, regardless of what you guys heard here today, just remember one thing. You be the student ambassadors and you bring student population to your universities, and everything goes away. We won't be talking about dollars or anything else. We need your help. Visit your schools, bring students to the universities. You'll start to see investment within those universities, and you'll start to see them grow. And it's something to be proud of because you made it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Scavella. For closing comments and questions, Chairman Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all to everyone who's testified. The hour is late. You've heard a lot. I'm going to try to bring this home and give you some context, since everybody wants to give you an education about what this is all about. You're talking to the guy who's been around here the longest, whose father helped create the system. So we have them since 1978. Jim Dillon, when was that 83. No, I know it was created. The committee was put together to start studying it, I believe, in 1978. Pop was on that, all right, and served for almost 20 years as a member of the Board of Governors, and then I followed after for about a good 15 years. So we have a little context, give you a little history, you can spread it to everybody else. For all the students in the room, okay, for all the students in the room, go on social media. Tweet me right now. Pick up one of these, tweet me right now. The system is not going anywhere in 4 years. Your education is set. Your education is solid. Your education is going to be there. Tell your students, tell your friends, let them know right now, text them right now. The state system of higher education, PASHE, is not going anywhere, okay? Because when people make irresponsible statements, okay, it's going to die, it's going to fall apart. It's not going to happen. That's irresponsible. That is completely irresponsible and sends a wrong message to you. But you're here because you're leaders in your respective universities. So your job is to communicate it back. The system's not going anywhere. Does it need to be fixed? Does it need to be repaired? Does some work need to be done to help make it right? Of course. But that's life. That's with everything. Okay? You always got to do some adjusting. Time is changing. Life is changing. You always got to make some adjustments. So, that being said, young man, okay? All right? That being said, one of the reasons why we have problems in higher education in Pennsylvania is because the state ranks 47th out of 50th of all states in the nation in what it contributes to all of higher education. Okay? So you want a lesson? You want a message to send back? Is make the state put more money into higher education. And in fact, let's talk about trying to figure out a way to make college free for all students in Pennsylvania. Let's go down that path. That's the message you need to send back, okay? We're bad in this space because the state is one of the worst states in the nation in terms of what it contributes to colleges and for students to go to college. That's why we have some of the crisis. However, the system, PASHE, that everybody wants to attack, okay? I'm looking at the numbers, and it's always good to have your facts and your charts and your numbers. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, am I right? Okay. The common PASHE cost, the common cost, it's a different way of saying average, okay? It's the common cost for attending all 14 universities, all right? Make sure I got my numbers right. In-state, room and board, all in. All in. I want to make sure my numbers are right. $20,907. Dylan, are my numbers right? Give or take? Okay, all right. Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Lois, are my numbers correct? That's about, okay? You want to go, if you want to make college, if you want to choose, if your issue is cost, University of Pittsburgh, and I hope my good friend Senator Costa doesn't mind me saying this, $32,000. Penn State, $29,000. Temple University, $31,000. Lincoln University, $20,000. So, if the question then there is, what is the best bang for your buck? I just laid out the numbers. All right? No. This ain't about applause. It's about sending a message around to everybody that this is the kind of investment that the Commonwealth needs to make college accessible to Pennsylvania students. If we can't make it free, we darn sure need to be in the business of making it accessible. Okay? That's your lesson, okay? I don't see you texting or tweeting, but I'm assuming everybody out here is doing this. And I'm doing this for a reason, because a lot of people throw around numbers, okay? But they throw around numbers to suit their own agenda item, all right? The last 5-year increase by state in funding for higher education across the country, last 5 years, 20.7% increase. Last 5 years, total, cumulative. Pennsylvania, 1.2%. You got me? All right? So, Madam Chancellor, all right, the trick is managing, okay, this in an environment, all right, where you have fewer dollars coming in. Why do we have an environment where we have fewer dollars coming in? Broadly, the question is who's contributing to the state's economy, okay, who's paying the freight, who's paying the taxes, and who's not, okay? And the other thing is, where are our priorities? So that goes to everybody who's involved in the system, the 102 or 103,000 students right now, okay, all right? All of the faculty, all the employees, the alums, everybody like that. Everybody's got to be all in to make sure that the system is going to be around. I know it will be, but we got to fight for it because it is a better economic investment, all right, in terms of debt that has to be paid, if you want to look at it that way, all right, student debt, than the other options that I mentioned. Now, I haven't even gotten to the private institutions, okay, because that's a whole different set of conversation. Understand the appropriations issue, okay? Let me give you a little bit of history here. We are appropriating state dollars, currently $453 million, that is about where we were 20 years ago. Think about that, okay? The state is providing about the same level of funding that it provided 20 years ago. In 1999, 2000, the state appropriations was $443,858,000. We are now at $453,108,000. All right? And the governor has decided to increase it is proposing to increase it to $468 million. Our high mark was in 2009, almost 10 years ago. We were $530 million. Then there was a reduction, and that for a 4-year period, the state appropriation was $412 million. 2 years after that $530 million, it dropped to $412 million. So let's be clear about that. Let's be real clear about what has happened and what the impact has been and what it has meant for those communities where these universities reside, where they are the prime economic driver. It's been tough. But even in all of that, okay, even in all of that, we were the first, this system was the first to put in place accountability measures and performance-based, Madam Chancellor, what is the right term? I'm forgetting the term.
Performance funding.
Performance funding.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Led the country.
All right, it's almost 7 years ago or so, something like that.
Longer than that, sir.
Okay.
Over 10 years ago.
Before anyone else, to have metrics, to have accountability, to have said, this is where we want to go, this is what we want to achieve, this is how we're going to get there, okay? We don't change around courses for students in the middle of the deal, all right? We manage that in an appropriate fashion so we don't negatively hurt the students and that we can plan accordingly. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Have we set standards that the biggies, okay, the big shots, Penn States of the world, you got to watch out up here in Harrisburg. Half the people up here have graduated from Penn State, all right? All right. Including my good friend here, Senator Schwenk, all right? But let's be honest about this. We got to be clear about the numbers and the circumstance in the situation. Having a conversation where we make college and higher education and advanced degrees and advanced learning, as you talked about, whatever it may be, should be a goal and should be an agenda item for the state of Pennsylvania. Having college be free, like they got in New York, okay, that we talked about with the PA Promise program, that's a good thing to pursue, because then we can unlock the skills and passion and talent in all of our more students so we can solve some of the bigger problems that we got to solve that's been intractable, okay? And I just got to say something about this poor, swimming coach? The swimming coach, all right? Because he gets thrown under the bus on a regular basis, okay? His salary, his base salary was $77,000, okay? The extra money that he got was for, I guess, a world-famous swimming program or a famous swimming program that he ran at the university. So he got extra dough as legally, appropriately, okay, based on the camp program that he ran. So there's a difference between the high-priced swimming coach, whose real salary was $77,000. Now, the football coach at Penn State, who shares the same haircut that I do, and I like him a lot, his annual salary is what, $5 or $6 million a year. And you're also paying for it because the tuition and room and board at Penn State is $29,000 a year. Almost $10,000 higher than what it costs to go to State System University. So, all of that to say this, and I'm being brief, believe it or not. Believe it or not, Mr. Chairman, believe it, and the chairman knows me and knows how we do these things, okay? If the message is that we need to create environments for our young people to realize their dreams, okay? And essentially to save the rest of us by unlocking that talent, we need to be in the business of investing in the state system, all right? Not disinvesting in the state system, okay? If the message is creating a high quality alternative or option, not alternative, option, because we all like options, we all like choice, okay? Then investing in these 14 universities should be the way to go. If you want to find people who are committed to your future and to your education and to your success, look inside the state system. Now, I'm not going to brag on him just because he's here, but I got to say something, okay? The president of Cheyney University is here in the room, President Walton. He had retired. He served on the Board of Governors for, what, 12 years, Mr. President? Maybe even longer, all right? He had retired. Retired. He was going out to spend, you tell me this, he was going out to spend, Judy, you know this, Senator Schwenk, I'm sorry. He was going out to spend time with his grandkids, all right? That's all he talked about. But he got a call to come back and serve, all right? And in that call to come back and serve, he's taken that university, all right, got it through its accreditation crisis, marching it through progress, and in fact, Senator Street, do you have that document I shared with you about student enrollment? I do. Can you send it down to me real quick? Is that the one? This is the one. That's the one. All right? Of the 14 universities in the state system, 11 or 12 of them have decreased in student enrollment. Okay? There's one that's been the most troubled, that has the most difficulty, the most problems. It's got an increase. That's Cheyney University. All right? So all the big shots, okay? All the big shots. I'm not going to call out names, but they've been mentioned quite frequently during the course of this panel. All right? They got reductions. Most of it tied to a real challenging reduction in appropriation. But the little one, all right, it's got an increase. And based on what I'm hearing from the president and knowing where the governor's going and know where Chair of the Board of Governors Shapiro is going, I expect, and I think it'll be realized, a very dramatic increase in enrollment comes in September. So let's be real clear about all of this. Okay, if you want college to be accessible, affordable, and high quality in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, your best investment is the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. That's your best investment, and you better not walk away from that, because then you're doing a disservice to the constituents and the young people that you say you're committed to. Talk is cheap around here. All right? Budgets show your commitment. Budgets show your priorities. Budgets are moral documents. They evidence what you're committed to. So, again, for the students in the room, send a message back. System is not going anywhere. We're going to have to do some work on it? Absolutely. We got to do work on everything. But you're going to have a university to graduate from when you graduate. You're going to have a university and a system to be proud of, to recommend, as Senator Velakovich said earlier. The students are the best marketers, and I believe that, okay? You're going to have a system to market to your colleagues, to your friends, to those who are coming after you in high school and looking for a place to go. I wish I had a question to ask you. I assume you're going to graduate with honors. Don't have to respond, all right? So you're going to graduate with honors in May, all right? But you have to fight for something that is proven to be extremely valuable for hundreds of thousands of young people who participated, probably millions, who participated in this system before you. And if you want to create something that is an opportunity and an option for young people after you, you got to commit and invest in this system. But it ain't going nowhere. It's not going anywhere.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. I do want to take a moment to commend Senator Hughes, not only for his, but his whole family's commitment to our system of higher education. Obviously, his passions today, he's generally a passionate gentleman, a lot more passionate than the accountant sitting in front of you. But his passions are driven by a family history in the system of higher education here in the Commonwealth, and I want to congratulate him and his family for that. Chancellor, Congressman, and all of the students here today, and Madam President, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity we had to discuss the system of higher education today and our financial review. That's essentially what this is in the end. You know, it's a financial review in line with the governor's budget proposal. You know, your commitment to the future of our Commonwealth, which is what this is about. You know, students are here. That's what we're talking about, the future of our Commonwealth, is laudable, and we collectively want to be partners with you in that goal. Just a couple, Chancellor, just a couple small questions in line with the financial conversation. The governor's proposal is to increase the state's commitment to the system by $15 million. Your request is for $73 million. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That differential will create what challenges for you, and what will be the response by the system if we, hypothetically, decide to just honor the governor's proposal?
Well, we're in discussion. I convened the presidents yesterday for most of the day, except when we were at the House Committee Appropriations meeting. We're discussing those possibilities now. The way this works is, as things unfold to us, we're in continual discussion from a leadership standpoint. So as we come to learn what the actual appropriation will be, then it's a matter of, again, the relationship of cost minus subsidy equals price. We're obviously very aggressively looking at how to be most efficient with our cost side, as we've discussed very thoroughly here. Then it looks at the subsidy side. Given that I've been very clear, of the $73 million, 50 is around compensation and benefit requirements. Those are extremely, normally they're variable costs in most businesses, as you know as an accountant, but they're rather fixed for us. So there are some real challenges here. The process, we will engage the leadership of the universities, we will engage the system board, and we will obviously keep engaging your committee. It is a process, and we want to conclude it midsummer, because our students have a right to know what their price is going to be. Actually, I wish I could tell them right now what their price is going to be. But we'll work through this. We've done this before. We'll do this with the integrity that I think you've come to expect from us.
But nothing significant enough to mention today that we have to be concerned about.
No, sir. I mean, it's a process. These are big numbers. I mean, I can only speak to that because I don't want to get ahead of what the board authorizes us to do. It's a very thoughtful, stakeholder-driven experience. There is always a commitment and concern about the price to students. But I will say that, for example, I believe a 3% increase to the students roughly would be about $125 a semester. I do want to keep things in perspective. I don't want to just throw out ideas ideas that aren't rooted in numbers and a context. So I don't have the answers. We're going to find the answers, but we do have a process. I will always respectfully want to engage in discussions on how we can reestablish what I know that Pennsylvania wants, and that's a greater investment, much as Senator Hughes has mentioned. That's a long-term proposition, sir. No expectation that happens next year, but would be welcome the opportunity to talk on the various ways we could achieve that.
Page 5 of your documentation provides for a request for the funding to allow for a increase in full-time equivalent in positions of 58.
Yes, sir.
The statement that aligns with that, I just need you to clarify. Compensation for 18-19, 58 full-time equivalent positions, net retirement, mostly faculty and staff related to projected enrollment growth. Mm-hmm. Can you speak about the enrollment growth? Because we've been talking about enrollment declines.
But you actually, to connect those two, it's enrollment shifting. We've been shifting away from certain areas of academic interest into other areas. I mean, we can't hire nursing faculty fast enough. Okay. So we've got growth areas in nursing, health, allied health, in technology and engineering, in business. And you can't just simply ask somebody who has dedicated a life's work in an experienced content area A to teach in content area B. It doesn't work like that. So now, the other thing that you'll see is that every year we have people retire and leave. So there's a shifting of our workforce. Now, obviously, there are rules to that shifting that we've all agreed to. And so the shifting isn't turning like a light switch on and off. It's like an aircraft carrier moving. That's why one of the things I mentioned earlier was to give us the tools on phased retirement and buyout, so in a respectful and appropriate way we can accelerate the shifting.
I'm only opining on the exact language of your document. All right. Sir. So
yes, sir.
Please provide a follow-up that explains that enrollment shifting.
Yes, sir.
All right, because that's not what this says. It says enrollment growth. So we can appropriately consider your request.
Yes, sir.
Right?
I appreciate the difference.
I appreciate that. And just lastly, just a couple comments. The hour is late. We've had you here far longer than we've requested your attendance today. And what we hear from the marketplace consistently now, and I've been here for 24 years, and the issues of the marketplace change over time. We talk about taxes and regulation and things we have to respond to. What we're hearing now overwhelmingly from the marketplace is, in order for Pennsylvania to be competitive for the students here in the future, workforce competence is what is necessary for our institutions to be nimble and reflective of what is in the modern economy. And that is something we have to reflect on as far as the future of our decisions here. The most important asset this state has in relation to that is our tremendous portfolio of higher education institutions here in Pennsylvania. You know, states can compete with us in subsidies. They can compete with us in tax burdens and tax policy, but no one can touch our system of higher education. It is the most diverse and the strongest in the nation. Our relationship with it is what's going to determine whether our state is going to be competitive in the future or not, and whether our current demographic challenges are going to change. What you've heard today from a lot of our members is just concern about the future in relation to 10 years of fiscal stress. And the finances and circumstances of the state's system of higher education are entwined in that. The highest growing percentage of our population is in senior citizens. It isn't in younger people, which is reflective in the student populations of our systems of higher education. Because of challenges financially, our commitments to our systems of higher education over the last 10 years have not kept up with the growth of costs. In fact, as Senator Hughes had mentioned, we were at a high watermark in terms of commitments to the system in 2010. The amount of costs, and while that's happening, the amount of revenue per student is going up and the cost per student is going up. It's all a reflection of fundamentals that we're concerned about. So we have to really consider, as hopefully the state moves forward financially in a stronger position, where the Commonwealth is going to be in relation 2 higher education going forward. as you walk out the door today, and you walk up the stairs, take a look to your right, and you'll see 3 small doors that move into 3 small rooms. I'm not even sure if these students in the room knows what those things are, but they are permanent fixtures to this building that used to have some function. They are just empty little rooms now, used to have phones in them. Now they're just empty little rooms, and they will never have a purpose again. We want to make sure that in our decisions in relation to the future of our children and the systems that serve them in higher education, that there's always a objective, always a goal, and always a purpose. And that's the objective of this committee collectively, and it's the objective of the majority of the members of the General Assembly, and I would say all the members of the General Assembly. That is our goal. The inquiries today were part of a financial process to review as we look to evaluate the governor's proposal, and we do have concerns going forward as far as where the finances of Pennsylvania and the finances of higher education are in that relation. But the goal is to continue to move things forward for the best interest of our students. And I really appreciate the opportunity you've all given us today to present our case and your case back to us as we try to finalize our finances for the 18-19 year. So thank you very much for your time. And we will adjourn for now, and we will return at 1:15 with the Pennsylvania State Police.
Senator, thank you. Anyone who wants to join us, the students and I will be in the rotunda for a brief get-together and ceremony. Thank you very much, Senator.